Hello. Hi, this is Brian Panish, and we're joined today by Robert Eglet. Robert's one of the top trial lawyers in America, primarily practices in Nevada. He's been very instrumental in helping save the tort system in Nevada, helping promote the rights of consumers. And Robert, welcome, and thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you for having me.
Robert, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, what it was that caused you to be a lawyer, and when it is you thought you wanted to be a lawyer.
Well, I grew up here in Las Vegas. I wasn't born here, but I'm pretty close to being a native. Been here nearly my whole life. And, I was about 13 years old, and I was what we call in those days a latchkey kid. I was raised by a single mother, and, I was working two jobs. And so afternoons I would have free after school. And one day I was riding my bike and I stumbled into the courthouse because I had to go to the bathroom, didn't even know it was the courthouse, then stepped into the beginning of a trial, very beginning, opening statements of a lawyer who was representing a man whose entire family was wiped out and killed by a drunk driver. And I was just captivated by it. I ended up cutting school for the next 2 weeks to watch this trial. Got in a little trouble for that, but after I got off restriction, I would go down after school and in summers and sit and watch trials all day. And I knew right then that's what I wanted to do.
So you went to college, obviously, you went to law school. When you got out, my recollection is you began practicing as an insurance defense lawyer. Is that right?
Yeah, like a lot of people, I came out of school with a lot of debt. And so I took a job with, at the time was I think the biggest law firm in Nevada. And they did insurance defense and commercial litigation. So I kind of fell into that insurance defense world and tried a bunch of cases as a defense attorney, left there after about 3.5 years and started my own firm with the idea that I was going to do plaintiff's work because my heart was never in the defense work, but had to pay the bills and all these insurance companies started sending me work. So I kind of fell into that trap and wasn't able to get out of the insurance defense world until the year 2000. In the year 2000, I left that, sold my defense practice and started doing plaintiff's work full time. And, and that's where I've been since then.
You haven't looked back, have you?
Never looked back. Best move I ever made.
So for young lawyers, people that are starting out that maybe are looking for a job or they've taken a job what would you say as to being an insurance defense lawyer? If you want to be a plaintiff's lawyer, how did that help you? What do you recommend for others?
Well, at the time, I think things are different now. I mean, it's much harder for these young lawyers to get trials. I mean, I spent 3.5 years at the defense firm I was at, and in that 3.5 years, I got 25 jury trials in. That's just kind of unheard of nowadays. It's so hard for these, with arbitration and alternative dispute resolution, it's hard for these young lawyers to get trial experience. Honestly, I would probably recommend that somebody go to the DA's office or the public defender's office now to get some trial experience because it's hard on the civil side. But for me, it was a good move. I got a lot of trial experience, and then when I left there, I continued to get a lot of trial experience, and that really, of course, helped me a great deal as a plaintiff's lawyer to have that kind of trial experience and then the insurance industry knowing that I'm capable and willing to try cases against them.
So Robert, you've done a lot of work in the area of data-driven jury selection. First, can you explain for our listeners, what is this data we're talking about?
Well, essentially, it's predictive analytics, which is universally accepted by every industry in the United States now, except law. And I think it's time we catch up in this area. I mean, if you look at all of the Facebook, Amazon, Google, all of these companies use big data essentially to market and sell products in ways that have never effective ways that more effective than ever been seen. And they're able to literally in presidential campaigns, they're able to predict how people are going to vote. They're able to predict what consumers are going to buy their products and why, and when they're going to buy them. And, Amazon and Facebook and others have this down to a science. I'm sure some people besides me get pop-up advertisements about a product that they happen to be thinking about, and all of a sudden it pops up on their phone or their computer, and like, well, how did they know that? And next thing you know, you're ordering something from Amazon. So I gathered about 4 years ago some of these data scientists and engineers together. I said, look, if these companies like Facebook and presidential campaigns and Amazon can do this, why can't trial lawyers use the same technology to predict or forecast how specific potential jurors in our cases are going to weigh in on the liability and damages issues in our cases? And their unanimous response to me was a 2-word response: you can. So at that point, I started working with them to develop a process and to do this. And over the last 3 years, we've been testing it on our firm's trials as well as other firms' trials. And the success we have had has just been tremendous. I mean, it works with unbelievable precision.
What kind of data are you gathering?
Well, basically, I rely on these data scientists and engineers from jury analysts to gather the data. But the process is basically a 3-step process. We engage, they help and with you, they work with the attorneys to do online focus grouping of hundreds of people, as opposed to, a focus group of 8 or 16 or 24, 1 or 2 or 3 panels of focus groups. So it's large volumes of data of people that tend to be statistically significant. And the virtual focus group members or the online focus group members are eligible for jury selection in the jurisdiction where the case will be tried, which is important. And then you have to have a statistically significant amount, which depends on the size of the jurisdiction. And so then they test your case through focus grouping, and they gather a lot of data. And then they also gather all the online data from all of these people, and they are able to come up with a predictive model once they take all that data and analyze it. And then they apply that predictive model to your actual jury panel members. And then they gather the same data they did on the focus group members on your jury panel members. And they're able to provide us with a predictive score, literally a percentage or a probability of, what is the probability this particular juror is going to, vote for the plaintiff for liability, or, apply some percentage of comparative negligence, or what is the probability that they're going to come up with a value of your case between, some X amount and Y amount. And that's essentially what they do. And then they provide us a report, and we're able to use that in jury selection to assist us. It's a very valuable tool to assist us in picking the appropriate jury for our cases.
Psychographics. What is that?
So psychographics is essentially, in years past, as you know, some of the old timers were really using demographics as kind of the key to jury selection. There was this idea that some professions made good plaintiffs jurors, other professions made bad plaintiffs jurors, some, socioeconomic backgrounds or races are better jurors than others. And what we found in the 21st century in America, that the demographics, we still use demographics, but they're not very good at predicting how a juror is going to decide on an issue. And what is very predictive is psychographics, the psychological profile of those people. And with the amount of data online on everybody, virtually everybody in America now, you can get a very accurate psychographic profile of almost anyone based on their online profile, which is predictive of how they're going to come down on these various issues that are important to your case.
Well, you've been practicing over 30 years. You've obviously got into a routine. Why try new things? Why rock the boat? Why be so creative?
Well, as you know, Brian, things are always changing, things are always moving. And if you're not learning, if you're standing still, then you're not progressing. Even I've been doing this over 30 years. I still go and I watch people like you and other great trial lawyers, and I learn from them. And quite frankly, I learn from a lot of these young lawyers out there nowadays who are trying new stuff. all the time. So, you know, I read and try to learn and try to continually get better. And that involves trying new things.
Well, how about for young lawyers or smaller firms? Can they afford to get involved in this jury analytics? If so, how would they do that?
Well, you know, depending on the size of the case and the jurisdiction and the number of potential jurors that you're going to have in your panel is going to be predictive of the, you know, the cost of the process. Obviously, if you've got a really big case, very long trial where you're going to have, you know, maybe hundreds of jury panel members, it's going to be more expensive versus a smaller case where you're going to have maybe a jury panel of 75 potential jurors, where it's more cost effective to do that. You know, so you can do these on a budget, and also you don't have to have as large a sample. You know, you may be satisfied with a 80% confidence interval versus a 95 confidence interval on your cases. So you can spend what you like. And then, you know, there's the option is if it is a big case and you're a smaller firm and you think this is necessary, you can always team up with a firm like yours or a firm like mine to pursue those cases, somebody who can help you finance those type of costs.
Now, I know you're heavily involved in a certain litigation. What are you doing right now?
Well, there's several litigations I'm involved in. Obviously, the one, probably the biggest one that you and I are involved in together is the 1 October shooting case. You know, the biggest, worst mass shooting in U.S. history that happened here in Las Vegas on October 1st, 2017. And so we've been working on that case, our firms together now for a year and a half since the incident. And you know, I think between our firms and the Robinson firm, we represent 98% of the victims from that tragedy. And MGM had requested several months ago that we enter into a mediation process with them. So we put a stay on the litigation, and in a few weeks, we're going to enter into a mediation that's scheduled to go about 4 weeks, and we'll see. You know, well, I would say I'm cautiously optimistic that
we know how that goes.
Yeah, we do.
Let's talk about what I really liked about the opioid litigation. I know you really passionately believe in the problem. You're addressing it. You're trying to representing governmental entities. Tell us a little bit about that litigation, the problems that face everyday Americans.
Well, you know, the opiate litigation, in my view, Brian, is the worst domestic crisis of our lifetime. You know, it crosses all racial, socioeconomic backgrounds. It doesn't matter who you are, what kind of background you come from, you are susceptible to this problem. And the opiate pharmaceutical industry has just crushed America with the number of people that they've gotten addicted. And so many people are still dying every year from these opiates. So, you know, I have the privilege right now of representing nearly all the counties and major cities in Nevada. And the state is getting ready to hire me as well in the next week or two to represent them in the opiate litigation. We're pursuing a state strategy here in Nevada. I'm working in conjunction with the MDL lawyers, but we've had a lot of success in past years when it comes to cases involved in MDL of pursuing a state strategy, keeping our cases in state court here. That's what we've done. Our cases are all.
Well, why do you like that, state versus federal MDL?
Well, we feel our experience is we get better results both in trial and in settlement, pursuing a state strategy here. And we also, and by doing this, we are able to get cases to trial faster than the MDL. And so we help drive the settlement of the MDL by the threat of we're either trying cases and getting verdicts, or that there's the threat of us trying cases and getting verdicts here. And, you know, we have a history in this state, our firm, of doing really well with our state court juries here. And, you know, I think particularly with these opiates cases, that those are really good cases to try in the jurisdiction that's been affected by them. I mean, you try one of these, you know, let's say I try one of these cases out in Lyon County, for example, or one of these other rural counties, which has just been devastated. The cities are bad, but the rurals are even worse for these opiate crisis. And so you've got a jury from that community that's been affected by that understands and knows the ramifications of this and has felt the pain and seen the pain. And so I think it's more effective.
What are the remedies that you're seeking by the lawsuits?
Well, the primary claim, along with a lot of the other claims, is nuisance. But that's the primary claim we're bringing on behalf of the counties and the cities. The damages to the counties and the cities, who provide all the social services, are just so widespread and deep. It's almost beyond comprehension. I truly believe the opiates litigation is bigger than the tobacco litigation. At the end of the day, I think these cases will be bigger. But from everything from child welfare services through the criminal justice system, there have been just hundreds nationwide, hundreds of billions of dollars have been expended. And I think the last report from the federal government, from the President's Economic Council, said that it's costing the opiates crisis is costing the United States more than $500 billion a year. Now, those are almost defense spending numbers. So that kind of tells you the ramifications. And so it has put incredible strains on all of these cities and counties, strain them to their, in Nevada, for example, we know that every county, the criminal justice system over the last decade has spent anywhere from 25 to 35% of their budget just on the opiates crisis.
Wow, what a problem. And hopefully you and many lawyers working on it will make a difference. We're running out of time, so I want to hit you with a couple quick questions. I'm in law school. I want to be a trial lawyer. What should I do in law school to try to prepare me and once I get out?
Well, if you're in law school, I would encourage you to participate in both moot court and mock trial. As you know, and I know, what a lot of people don't realize is how important writing skills are to litigation. It's important that you hone your writing skills. That's the number one factor that I look at when I'm hiring a new lawyer, is their writing skills, because many times these cases are won and lost on the pretrial briefing that's done. But those are the three. I would really focus on moot court and mock trial, as well as writing skills. And, I would try to get with a firm that can get you as much experience as possible in the courtroom.
And as you talked about earlier, and that may now be government, whether it be prosecution or public defender, they're certainly not running out of cases there, and they don't have clients to report to if something goes bad with a young lawyer trying the case.
That's true. That's true.
In the last 10 years, what are the biggest changes you've seen in the personal injury litigation field?
Well, the mechanization and automation of things has certainly changed. Computers and the way we practice and the speed of which we practice is certainly changed. I think in some ways it's become a lot tougher. Tort reform has, it's been widespread across the country. Fortunately, here in Nevada, we've been very successful. Bill Bradley and I and others have been very successful at the legislative level, stopping significant tort reform, other than the medical malpractice caps and then what they did a few years ago to construction defect here. We've been pretty successful at that, but I think that's one of the biggest problems. And then the other thing I've seen is the insurance companies are, and a part of this is, I think, is the problem with too many plaintiffs' lawyers, or all lawyers, quite frankly, not having enough trial experience and having that fear of going to trial because they haven't tried enough cases, are settling cases for less than their actual value. And that's become the norm. I mean, I see lawyers all the time here in Nevada settling cases for less than the meds. And, that just was unheard of when I first started practicing. So, those are some challenges I think that we're facing. And so we've got to get our young lawyers trying more cases. We've got to get them more trial experience. And as you know, that's been a concern of mine for several years now, and something I've been working on as well, is trying to get lawyers to try more cases.
How have you integrated the changes in technology into your practice? So I know you're very involved in technology.
Well, obviously we try to keep up as best we can with all the technology. Historically, lawyers have kind of been behind the curve when it comes to technology with respect to the rest of business. But we've tried to stay up. We certainly tried to stay up with our trial presentation and the multimedia experiences that jurors now expect, quite frankly, you to put on during trial. You can't just stand up and give an oral argument anymore. They want to see the show as well, and so you have to be prepared and schooled and knowledgeable how to do that. PowerPoint is a huge thing now. I can't imagine going into a case without PowerPoint now. But I mean, we're using laptops and iPads as our entire trials are on those iPads and laptops now. So it's gotten more efficient. At the same time, the speed at which things are changing, you're having to constantly learn, literally on a daily basis, to keep up with the new technology that's being utilized.
Well, Robert, we're unfortunately out of time. We want to get you back. You got so many great things to share with our listeners. And thank you so much for coming on, and I look forward to having you back.
Thank you, Brian.